Kendrick Lamar came really close to giving up at one point. It wasn't because he wasn't skilled or grinding, but rather because the game hadn't noticed yet. Additionally, the most significant voice in hip-hop history was all but destroyed by what transpired behind the scenes. At first, Top Dog Entertainment was hesitant to sign him. According to reports, Eminem put him through a test that would break most artists. And Moss City Kendrick was this close to leaving for good before the world even heard the phrase "good kid." We're discussing restless evenings. Secret meetings and doors slamming in his face confirm that, as of right now, not one other rapper has passed away except for him. Except for him, the rapper has passed away. And the very artist who preserved the culture might have been lost if one choice had gone the other way. Kendrick is a titan of the art, a generational prophet, and a Pulitzer Prize winner today. However, it hardly ever occurred. What actually transpired at TDE behind those closed doors then? What was the secret test that Eminem took? And how did Kendrick overcome his near obscurity to become a generation's voice? Before everything even started, let's return to where it all stopped. Prior to, he was Kendrick the King. Prior to the grand national tours, the Pulitzer Prize, and the crowd-splitting Not Like Us. Another young, eager Compton MC, attempting to make it in a world that didn't want to hear him, was Kendrick Lamar Duckworth. Unbelievably, the industry nearly managed to silence him before he was given a microphone. Let's go back. In the neighborhood, Kendrick was referred to as K-Dot, or Thin. In the early 2000s, ardent child with fire in his eyes and a notebook full of rhymes. At the age of 16, charge. Labels ought to have taken notice of it alone. But you know what? No one did. No label representatives were knocking on his door. Just silence, no hoopla, no offers. Despite being surrounded by talent and history in Compton, Kendrick wasn't the clear standout. He didn't wear the gaudy guy's clothes. He was not noisy. Clubs and chains were not the subject of his raps. Some people thought his songs were too intelligent, philosophical, and contemplative. And Kendrick believed that things would change. When he first met with Top Dog Entertainment, they informed him that he wasn't prepared. According to TDE sources, Kendrick's early work lacked a voice, was overly technical, and lacked feel. Some even speculated that Top Dog rejected him initially due to the label. Failed to come up with a marketing strategy for someone like him. It wasn't commercial, flamboyant, sellable, or too real or poetic. Consider that. It's the man who would won. They speak for the voiceless, nearly kicked to the curb since he was not a part of the system. Kendrick, however, persisted. Returning to the lab, he researched NAS, anal packs, dissected flows and andos, and attended lectures in the form of Ice Cube interviews, and Kendrick continued to drop heat as everyone else ignored him. Day 4 off training. People began to notice gradually, but not quickly enough because he nearly left at one point. There was a night when he was saying, like, "Maybe I'm too real for this rap's *T." The close buddy from the early K-Dot days told Complex, "Perhaps I'm not meant to be large." He was sick of being ignored, but then something crazy began sniffing around, and that's where Eminem comes in. Before Kendrick caught Dre's attention and got that legendary cosign, a mutual connection purportedly, from Aftermath suggested that they test his writing skills to see if the Compton buzz was just local noise or if this kid was that nice. According to a notorious behind-the-scenes story, Eminem himself asked Kendrick to come to the studio for a session. But there was a catch. Kendrick had to write a full 16-bar verse in front of him. Entourage. No pre-written material, just him. A beat and an M. It was a test, a rite of passage. Something that Eminem allegedly used to silently judge up-and-coming lyricists. No cap. You had to pass the authenticity test, and Kendrick stepped up. Eminem nodded, smiled, and told Dre, he's the one, that special kid. At that point, everything changed. Teed reevaluated, and all of a sudden, the label that nearly passed. The pain of those early rejections, the nights of wondering if he was too different to be accepted, never left him. That's why Ken drew with intensity and purpose. Even to this day, like a man who knows how close he came to being erased. Hey, on him, he realized what he really was. Not just a rapper. A revolution. From that point on, neither hip-hop nor Kendrick looked back. Even after impressing Eminem and eventually signing with TDE, Kendrick still had to endure internal struggles. Industry skepticism and pressure to sell out or be shelved. What followed would test his soul, loyalty, and legacy. Most people thought that was it when he finally received the go-ahead from Top Dog Entertainment. Doors opened, the world embraced him, and the GOAT era began. But in reality, the real war began the moment he signed the dotted line. The rest of the roster, including J-Rock, Schoolboy, and AB Soul, had already established their identities. They were gritty, street tough, and aggressive, while Kendrick was rapping about trauma, politics, and existential pain. Growing up surrounded by death is still trying to feel human. It was real. Too real. Inside TDE. Kendrick was respected. Yes, but he was also regarded as the quiet one, the deep one, the lyrical technician. On one occasion, Top Dog himself drew Kendrick aside and remarked, "You got the pen, no doubt, but this doesn't care about poems," according to the label. "And will forget you until you can figure out how to make them feel you." It stuck with Kendrick. Deep because the industry was changing quickly at the time. Drake had just begun to dominate with his melodies and smooth rap singing blends. Trap was becoming popular, and artists were flooding the scene with turn-up anthems, club bangers, and viral dances. There wasn't exactly room for a philosophical rapper wearing an introspective hoodie discussing PTSD and survivor's guilt. In an now famous TDE creative meeting, executives publicly discussed whether Kendrick should be put on hold while the label concentrated on acts that were ready for the mainstream. According to a source who was present, there was genuine discussion about halting Kendrick's release because, while they loved him, they were also realists and needed to sell records and get radio spins. "We love his message, but is the audience even listening for that right now?" The source said, "It hurt. Nobody wished to express it." He was devastated to learn that Kendrick had passed Eminem's test. The Compton native who studied Nas as if it were gospel. The lyrical genius who rewrote verses 10 times until they bled truth. And the same label that gave him a chance was now doubting whether he had ever made it. However, the vibe was clear. He learned this information not from an email but from someone who made a mistake and told him directly. According to rumors, Kendrick left the building that day without saying anything, no answer. No tirade, just walked, got into his car, and disappeared for 3 days. When he did return, he entered the TDE studio, locked the door, and began recording what would go down as the early skeletons of Section 80. The twist is that, despite the label's doubts about his commercial appeal, Kendrick had already won over a significant fan who wasn't even in rap. Dave Free, TDE's marketing. Behind the scenes, locations, art schools, underground film circles, and even progressive fashion collectives. One of those circles had an Interscope intern who showed Kendrick's early demo. Destiny is calling again. Dre didn't hesitate after hearing those tapes. He signed him, brought him to Aftermath, and said, "If you don't move, I will." That message quickly reached the dog, and all of a sudden, TDE realized they had something more significant than a street rapper. Songs like Kesha's So Raganra and High Power Heaven. Even though they didn't become popular, Kendrick didn't beg for the spot. Instead, he made them come back to him. Then he released Section 80, which was completely independent, raw, and unapologetically Kendrick. No forced hits, just storytelling, philosophy, vulnerability, violence, and most importantly, authenticity. Yo, Kendrick's different. People whispered at first, setting the tone. The critics loved it. The streets felt it. The fans built around it. And then came the cosign that changed everything. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg game. All three stood on stage at a TDE show in LA. Dre took the mic and said, "The future is the current sound of West Coast hip-hop. Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself." The shelvable rapper then became the focal point of a movement. However, most are still unaware of how nearly it never happened. Because hip-hop might have lost its sharpest edge before the conflict even began if Kendrick hadn't secluded himself, recorded his soul into Section 80, and created a new fan base from scratch. By this point, Kendrick Lamar had established his worth to TDE, early fans, reviewers, and even the underground. Like a manifesto, Section 180 fell to the ground. Uncomfortable, political, raw, and incredibly poetic. However, the stakes increased, along with the hype surrounding him. Since getting that wasn't the end of Dr. Dre's interest, the firestorm started at that point. Kendrick received the call that most rappers hope for shortly after the Section 80 momentum. Deep down though, you're afraid that Dre wants you in the studio? Kendrick arrived at the storied Record One studio in Los Angeles tonight with a sweatshirt on, perspiration in his hands, and a beating heart. The air was heavy within. Dre nodded, with executives and producers on either side. He didn't grin when Kendrick entered. "Are you ready? We're going to find out," you say. Kendrick anticipated being invited to perform, perhaps a verse or a freestyle. No, Dre had another idea. He was given 5 beats. The second exam was not a measure of skill, but rather of pressure, discipline, and focus, Dre stated. "You got 90 minutes, 5 songs from scratch." We watch. No help, no phones, no TDE team, just Kendrick, a pen, and an Aftermath royalty silently watching from behind the glass. Legacy. Dot and Kendrick. He blacked out track after track. He pieced together entire verses, hooks, and ideas in real time. He painted visions instead of mumbling or looking for rhymes. According to a former engineer on site, he was unaware that someone within Dre's circle was already plotting against him. One A&R from Dre's team, let's call him M, wasn't sold on Kendrick, saying he was too poetic, not gritty enough, and worst of all, he's not marketable. No girl is going to play. In the final moment, Dre stepped out for 10 minutes, and the same executive approached him and said, "Look, you can rap. But this isn't 1996. At first, Kendrick didn't hear that. But he sensed that the same guy was in his ear, whispering, trying to persuade him to shelve Kendrick, or at best, develop him quietly while the label focused on more commercial artists. Do you wish to live? You need a feature, or at least a gimmick. When Dre returned, Kendrick went into the booth and recorded the 6th beat without being asked or told to, but he made a cut so strong that it left everyone in the studio silent. The hook, "If I get a die broke, I'll die with my pen in the sky." Kendrick simply stared at him without responding or smiling, just giving him that K... stare. The last line was for M. Everyone knew it, but no one said it. Dre just leaned back, smiled, and said, "We're done here." That's suicide masquerading as success. My next artist is the one. The surprise was that Kendrick was nearly excluded from the Aftermath shortlist because of internal politics. But he didn't even realize it until he rapped about the guilt of survivors while others rapped about bottles and Benzes. He gave an 11-minute emotional breakdown about mortality, karma, and broken promises in his song Sing About Me. While others composed strip club tunes and they saw Dot's fans. Even the industry was unable to ignore Kendrick anymore, as seen by a widely shared tweet that read, "Kendrick is out here telling full stories with plot twists. All you rappers are still rhyming money with honey." It's the same machine that earlier doubted his marketability was Intercope. He was designated as their flagship artist by Mal. The term conscious hip-hop, which had all but died before Kendrick brought it back to life, became the subject of entire playlist curations. Award programs rushed to acknowledge him. Applause. The Grammys attempted to atone for their transgressions. However, the world went crazy when Kendrick lost to Lamar in 2014 for Best Rap Album. Twitter criticized the Grammys for weeks when Lamar publicly apologized and contacted Kendrick saying, "You got robbed. That award was yours." What was Kendrick up to? He remained silent. He simply returned to the studio and began working on To Pimp a Butterfly in silence. For him, it was about resurrection more than retaliation. And all the artists who believed that the pen had died. Poetry couldn't sell, according to every executive. A hip-hop historian wrote that Kendrick made it cool to care again, forcing all rappers who believed that sophisticated bars were out of style to bow to a youngster they almost erased. Rap got its heart back from McKay. Labels began searching. For the next Kendrick, when a queen of Compton stated, "My son walked in quoting how much a dollar costs to me." That's deeper than rap. That's generational. The issue is that Kendrick had more than simply bars. Therefore, there was just one. He has guts, conviction, and something to lose. The game was not pursued by him. He created the game. While the world was still in shock from the lyrical earthquake, chase him. That was excellent. I'm a city kid. Behind the scenes, something personal was simmering. A phone call that altered everything. Eminem desired a direct conversation with Kendrick. Remember years ago when Kendrick had gone into the notorious Detroit studio and M had taken the ghostwriter test? He was separated from his crew, told to write immediately, and passed by himself, shocking even Eminem. Yes, M never forgot that occasion. Eminem called up Dr. Dre and said something crazy after Kendrick's album went platinum, and he was hailed king by the streets, critics, and legends. At his age, I believe he is superior to me. Hold on, what? Dre was taken aback. They were silent for a long time. Following the call, M said he did it his way. I had 50 behind me. He had nobody but his truth. This time, the encounter wasn't a test. A handover took place. I didn't believe in you back then, but you've become something I could have never been. Eminem allegedly drew Kendrick aside during a secret studio session without cameras or journalists, saying, "You proved me wrong. You're the only one who never played the game wrong." Kendrick didn't boast. He refrained from boasting. "I just stated what needed to be said, even if nobody listened," he added, nodding simply. Then M did something that no one anticipated. He gave Kendrick complete access to his personal vault of Kendrick, turned down unreleased instrumentals and beats produced by M himself. Some from the Eminem Show era, untouchable, unwrapped, and raw. He thanked M and explained that he was the first iteration of To Pimp a Butterfly. He wanted the truth, not Eminem's firepower, and that's why he made the decision. Boldest move of his career. He chose the path of profit and ripple effect over the cosign, guaranteed headlines, and mainstream approval. According to immediate TDE insiders, Kendrick told Top Dawg and Punch, "If y'all want hits, I'm not your guy anymore, but if you want a legacy, let me talk." T let him speak at that point, and the result was To Pimp a Butterfly. An album that changed the industry, divided society, and led to Barack Obama naming How Much a Dollar Cost as his favorite song of the year. From